I'm Eric Murray from the Kindred Network Services team. I'm here to show you what a typical wiring closet looks like, some of the equipment that you might find in the wiring closet, and kind of point out a few things that we may be calling and asking about and that you can assist us with should we have any trouble or need remote hands-on assistance. I'll take close-up videos here in a second, but what we have in this wiring closet is a router, a wireless controller, a broadband modem, and some switches, several switches. One of the switches is a power over Ethernet switch. We also have our WAN connection, which is coming in on a CSU DSU, which is in between these two. I'll have to show you in just a second. This is pretty typical of most wiring closets. Some wiring closets will have a bigger router, or some of the equipment will look a little bit different. But I'll try to go over things and point out some specific details to help identify these devices. First piece of equipment we're going to go over is the facility router. In this facility, this is this piece of equipment right here. As you can see, it has a power plug and a power switch on the front. And key is it says Cisco 2800 series. We're either going to have a Cisco 2800 series, a 2900 series, a 3800 series, and a 3900 series in most of our facilities. The 3800 series and a 3900 series will be about twice the thickness. They'll be a little thicker than this unit. This is 1U in size. Typically you'll see a memory card, a couple lights on the front panel, a console cable, a couple USB ports, but there won't be any other ports on the front of it. The rest of the ports that we're going to talk about on this will be in the back. The power comes in here on the power plug, and then on-off switch, which will be on most routers. This right here is what the back of the router looks like. There's usually several module slots, like here, that's a blank plate, a couple more blank plates. And then what we have here is where the T1 lines come in. This blue cable right here with the big wide connector is the main WAN interface into the facility. This will be dial-up for remote backup or remote access capabilities to enable us to manage the router. But this big blue cable right here is one key connection. That's what brings the T1 or the multiple T1s into the site. Also, you'll notice, if I can get up under it, here we have the Ethernet connections. These Ethernet connections will usually go to a switch, which we'll talk about soon. This is what connects the router to the local area network. This will go to a core switch. This will also be a key connection. These are usually labeled. If you see at the top, it's a little yellow label. It says FE01. That's Fast Ethernet 01. The next unit we're going to talk about here is the Visual Networks CSU DSU. This is what brings the T1 line in from the wall and connects it to the router. So this is what the front of it looks like, and there'll be a series of lights on there that will show signal and alarms and other important information. What we're going to be concerned with is the back of the unit. The back of the CSU, which is this big blue box right here, is going to have this big blue connector, and that big blue connector is part of that blue cable that goes into the router that we were just talking about a minute ago, which is, try to get that connector right there. So that's what connects to the router, is the CSU DSU. That's what brings the WAN connection in. There's going to be a T1 port right here. This white cable is going into the T1. So this white cable is going into the T1. There's a power connection, a power cord right here, black power cord right there. So this T1 is going to go to a wall jack. If we trace out the T1 from the blue Visual Network CSU DSU, it comes to a biscuit jack like this on the wall. It typically has a circuit line, circuit ID, and T1 line written on it, with the cable, the Cat5 cable that it connects to the T1. Here's another angle of the blue CSU DSU. It has another port on here called the Ethernet. This Ethernet connection is what allows us to manage this box. It will also be connected to the core switch, which we'll go over in a minute. Here's another angle of the big blue cable. This is called a V.35 cable that connects to the router port right here on the serial interface. Here's a typical switch that you might find in a facility. This particular switch is a power over Ethernet switch. They usually say PoE in part of the model number on the front of the switch. This is a Catalyst 2960. Most switches say Catalyst on the front of them. Here's another one, Catalyst 2950. Another Catalyst 2950. Typically, these switches will be connected to a core switch via these Ethernet cables. At this particular facility, switch 00, which we have labeled here, focus there, is the core switch. Sometimes it's switch 05, but we can usually tell you what switch is the core switch, and they should have a label on them. So in these Ethernet ports on the switch will be connected the fast Ethernet port of the router that we discussed, as well as the fast Ethernet port coming off the blue CSU DSU. In addition, the core switch is going to be uplinking the other switches. So this port will go up to this switch right here. It doesn't usually matter which port, we will tell you which port, but the switches are usually connected to each other to provide connectivity to the switch for the rest of the devices that are connected to it. If you have to remove one of these switches, all that's required is usually these screws right in the side that screw into the rack on each side. Sometimes there'll be either 2 or 4 screws total. In this one they just have 1 screw in each side. You would just take these 2 screws out and then remove all the cables. Try to label them or put them back in the same ports they came out of when you replace it with the new switch. And then slide the new switch in to the rack, and then replace the cables in the same ports they came from. This panel right here is what's called a patch panel. So all of the network jacks in the facility are going to be cabled to this panel, the patch panel, which will then have these patch cables like these right here that will come in, and they're in the wire management so you can't see them right now, but they're coming in and they're going through this wire management and then connecting to these switches in these ports. This facility also has a wireless LAN controller. That's this unit right here. Cisco. It says here Cisco 5500 series wireless controller. Sometimes that will be another model number, but most of our facilities are going to have a 5500 series wireless LAN controller. Not all facilities have wireless LAN controllers. Some of them we use the controllers back in the data center to actually control the wireless access points. What this does is this actually provides a management and a control infrastructure for the wireless access points. Typically there's only a couple connections to this. One will be to the core switch. Another one may be connected to broadband. In this particular instance, I believe this one will be connected to broadband at this facility. Sometimes we'll have the broadband actually connected to one of these switches. So broadband will be coming in on this broadband modem here. This one's by Motorola. It could be many different brands, but what you'll see on many of them is a series of lights, a few ports, and one of the key indicators, it'll say DSL. If you can get that in focus right there. There you go. See, it says DSL. That's because this is a DSL broadband connection. Sometimes they are cable internet connections. This broadband modem is connected to this wireless LAN controller in this instance right here, but many times the back of this broadband modem will have the Ethernet cable that will plug into one of the ports on one of the switches. Here you can see the back of the broadband modem, and then this is the Ethernet cable that is connecting to the wireless LAN controller. followed by the phone line. In this instance, since it's DSL, it's coming in on phone line, which will be going to a biscuit jack on the wall that looks like one of those. So many times, if it's cable connection, it'll be cable instead of a phone line, like a cable like your cable TV at home. And then you have an on-off switch and a power supply. This power cable here is going to a power supply that is plugged into the UPS. Now, most of the network equipment should be connected to a UPS. These are the back of the UPSs, which these are battery operated to provide power and surge protection in the event of power spikes or short power outages. The UPSs only last about 15 or 20 minutes on battery power if the facility loses power. This is the back of it. They have multiple electrical outlets that can be used to power network equipment. This is the front of the UPSs. There are two here at this facility. They have a series of lights indicating how much charge, if there is any load, if there's a significant load on the UPS, it will be indicated by the load light. And when the batteries go bad, sometimes they'll have a red alarm light along with an audible signal. Just for reference, here is here's one of the facility POP servers, point of presence servers, along with the keyboard and a monitor for administration of that server. This video will not go into detail about these items, but many will be familiar with these as the tapes are being changed, or the Windows infrastructure or our network operations team may request someone to gain access to this server. Other types of equipment you may find in a facility is a WAS appliance. That's what we use for WAN acceleration. It'll be an appliance similar to this with just a few ports on it, and it will say Cisco and have WAS and the model number up front. We can also talk you through that. Unfortunately, this facility does not have a WAS appliance, so I'm not able to show you one in this video. That concludes this video of a wiring closet overview.